What's up, my homies? I bet you thought I was gone for good, and for those who kept the faith and stuck around, let me give you my most heartfelt thanks as well as my sincere apologies in leaving you guys hanging for so long. Like I have said before, this YouTube channel is just a hobby of mine. I do it because I enjoy it, but sometimes real life issues get in the way of my productivity here, and being that I don't do YouTube for a living, sometimes YouTube has to take a backseat to other priorities in my life. Now, the good news though is that things are finally returning to normal and we can continue on our quest to provide informative videos on hair loss so people can begin their fight against this disease in confidence, knowing they're not falling for misinformation and pseudoscientific quackery. On that note, let us take a look at another product from our good friend Hairguard called the Scalp Elixir. For those who are new to this channel, I've reviewed a couple of products from Hairguard before in the past, including the Grow Band as well as the Grow Comb, and this video should really be considered a follow-up to those videos, so if you haven't watched those videos yet, I would recommend doing so first before you watch this video, so I'll go ahead and link those in the description below. So, what is the Scalp Elixir? Unlike the Grow Band and Grow Comb, the Scalp Elixir is a blend of natural compounds all sold at the low price of $40 for a single bottle, which I assume is supposed to last for 2 months since the stores they sell it on also has a subscription option where you can buy it for $33 every 2 months. Now, this doesn't seem like a really bad deal, although keep in mind you can buy a 6-month supply of 5% minoxidil, which of course is a clinically and FDA approved treatment, for just $30. However, as effective as minoxidil is, not everybody can use it. You know, some people are allergic to it, some people are sensitive to it, and some people don't respond very well to the treatment due to the lack of sulfotransferase on the scalp, which for those who don't know is the enzyme that converts minoxidil into its active ingredient on the scalp called minoxidil sulfate. So people who lack that enzyme and they put minoxidil on their scalp, it would be the equivalent of just like putting water on their scalp. So that doesn't happen with everybody, but there are some individuals who just do not respond to minoxidil, although I will say most people just don't give minoxidil enough time, or they freak out about the shedding and just stop. That's probably that's probably the reason why most people stop it, in fact. So anyways, if this Scalp Elixir thing actually does work, then $40 or $33 every 2 months may not be a bad deal, especially if we consider the price of some other growth stimulants on the markets, which are also marketed as alternatives to minoxidil, like you have stamoxetine or adenosine. But this is, of course, entirely contingent, though, on whether or not this Scalp Elixir thing even works at all. And I'll be honest, I'm not feeling very optimistic that it will work. I mean, especially after I took a very extensive look at Hairguard's other products, but you know what they say about a broken clock, right? So I will set my cynicism aside for this video, and I'll go ahead and dive balls deep into this product and see if this product's efficacy is corroborated by any evidence-based research. So, when I was looking over the description and ingredients of the Scalp Elixir, I immediately noticed something fishy. The product sounds very similar to another product I remember being sold on the market called Grogenix. And I don't mean similar in the sense that it is a natural hair loss treatment. I mean, there are countless numbers of these on the market. I mean, it is similar because they have virtually the exact same ingredients, including what Hairguard describes as a proprietary ingredient called Synfolex. And I'll link the source below so you guys can see for yourselves what I'm talking about. So on the current Hairguard website, the active ingredients are listed as Synfolex, Caffeine, Safflower oil, saw palmetto, Eclipta Alba, and Taurine. However, if you look at the old Grogenix website, they also mention a bunch of other ingredients not mentioned specifically in the Hairguard product, including magnesium oil, oleuropen, nettle root tincture, peppermint oil, cushion tincture extract, rosemary oil, red reishi tincture, and also emu oil, which I find especially repugnant since emu oil comes from the fat of the emu bird, which you have to kill in order to extract the fat from it. Yet on the Hairguard website, they describe the product as plant-based, which most would assume to mean no animal products or byproducts. So if they're selling a consumer product marketed as plant-based, yet it has emu oil in it, then that is misleading and quite frankly just absolutely appalling, particularly if you are vegan or if you're just an individual who is opposed to the idea of animal cruelty being found in a product which is used just for cosmetic purposes. And this sadly wouldn't be the first time this has happened with a hair loss product. I know Region Pure did the same thing with their shampoo, Region Pure DR. by claiming it had no animal products in it, when in reality it also had emu oil in it, which pissed me off especially since there was a time I even promoted this product back when I wasn't as informed about hair loss as I am today. Now, I don't know for sure if the Hairguard Scalp Elixir still has emu oil in it, and I can't even be sure if Grogenix Scalp Elixir is the exact same thing, though they both mention Synfolex, or Synfolex, I should say, as their proprietary secret ingredient, and since Hairguard won't reveal what is in Synfolex, it is impossible to know if Synfolex contains these other ingredients mentioned on the Grogenix product. If you do a Google search for Synfolex, you will find literally nothing. So not only can't you not evaluate how effective it is, we can't even determine how safe it is. Like, what if you're allergic to one of the ingredients in it, for instance, and we don't know if it has any ingredients that people would be morally opposed to, like emu oil. So the lack of transparency from Hairguard is potentially harmful to consumers. So on top of all the other shady stuff they've done, it really brings into question their overall business ethics as a company to sell this mysterious proprietary blend and not even fucking tell us what's in it. So many people would be willing to overlook this, though, if the product actually works. So let us go ahead and take a scalpel to all the claims made in this product's marketing. And fortunately, Hairguard made a video presenting the product. Unfortunately, the person narrating the video isn't the guy who says blood flow. It's some other bloke, and I'll have to be careful because I know he has an itchy copyright strike trigger finger, and he has filed strikes on my other videos before. So I may need to cut this up a bit, but let's see what he has to say and examine whether or not his claims hold up to any kind of scientific scrutiny.
Thanks for choosing Hairguard.
Now let's not jump to conclusions. I haven't chosen anything yet, but go ahead and make your case.
Why did we make the Scalp Elixir? We made it really as an alternative to minoxidil.
In that case, you better be able to present studies that are on par with minoxidil, and considering minoxidil is an FDA-approved treatment with literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of research, good fucking luck with that. But like I said, go on, I'm listening.
If you've ever used minoxidil or you've heard about it, you probably know there's quite a few side effects that come along with it. One of the main ones is potentially dark circles, your aged skin. This is really quite a powerful chemical that you're putting on your skin every day.
What an absolute chode. So what he's doing here is gaslighting. He already knows competing with a juggernaut like minoxidil, which is clinically proven to work, is going to be no easy task. So rather than rely on his product's merits, he has to start by ensuing seeds of doubt into people considering treatment, so they're less likely to go for the conventional route based on unfounded fear-mongering being spread about minoxidil. What he said about dark circles and skin problems is not a side effect of minoxidil. In fact, if you go to the physician's drug reference online and look up minoxidil side effects, you won't find anything relating to what he said. His claim is based on an unproven theory about minoxidil that it works by inhibiting the contraction of collagen, which is the substance that causes scar tissue. The theory is that people with androgenetic alopecia have increased scar tissue around the hair follicles, and minoxidil may decrease or relax the scar tissue, allowing the hair to grow more effectively. This is one of the many unproven theories as to why minoxidil works, but it is just based on in vitro studies and it has not been corroborated in any human trials. Even if this does occur in humans, there is no reason to believe that the effect would cause dark circles. This is just conjecture people are making based on limited data and also on anecdotes which are commonly reported online. But anecdotes are no substitute for real scientific data because the claims made by these people can't be shown to be directly related to minoxidil. I mean, there are so many factors that affect skin that may not be accounted for in these claims made by these people. Like, do they smoke? Did they spend too much time in the sun? Did they drink a lot of alcohol? Did skin problems run in the family? I mean, etc., etc. So you can see why anecdotes have no place in a scientific discussion. So until you can use actual in vivo studies to back up your claims, please dispense with the goddamn fear-mongering.
So we really dove into the research and looked at what natural ingredients also stimulate the hair, but they're naturally derived, so they don't have the same side effects.
This is a fallacious argument. It is the very textbook definition of an appeal to nature fallacy. Nature is completely indifferent to you and your well-being. Don't believe me? Then go ahead and try drinking tea made from the hemlock plant, or maybe go try playing in a pool infested with crocodiles and see what happens. What is especially funny about using an argument appealing to the virtues of nature in this context, though, is that you run a company dedicated to fighting hair loss, which of course is a natural physiological process in men who are genetically predisposed to androgenic alopecia, which is the cause of hair loss in a plurality of both men and women. So why would you use nature to extol the benefits of your product when it's nature itself which is trying to kill our hair to begin with and turn us all into big ugly slapheads like Jason Blaha? In the case of hair loss, nature is our enemy. So tell me, why should I give a fuck again that the ingredients in your product are natural? It doesn't matter. So he then goes on to talk about how to apply the product. It's mostly just an instructional video, and then he plugs a couple of other things he's selling, like his magical hair shampoo, as if a product that stays on the scalp for only a few minutes per day is somehow going to absorb into the scalp and promote hair growth, and that's assuming any of the ingredients in it worked in the first place, which, spoiler alert, they don't. So I'm not going to talk much more about the video itself, especially since I don't want to give him an excuse to copyright strike me again, but I did notice his hair in the video. He looks like he's a Norwood 3, but he looks like he grows out the tuft of the hair in the middle of his hairline and then just kind of combs it side to side to give the illusion of thicker hair. And I should know because I did the same thing back when I was a Norwood 3 before my hair transplant, which brought me down to a Norwood 2. Now, it must be awkward to sell products to fight hair loss when you have a poverty hairline to begin with, but then again, we're talking about someone who took a blood pressure cuff, refitted it for the scalp, and now sells it for $300 as a hair loss treatment that he claims is superior to finasteride, so he probably doesn't have much respect for the intelligence of his viewers to begin with. There are good ways to style your hair, even when you do have hair recession. I know the channel Nick Shell gives some good tips on this, but what this Hairguard guy is doing is way too obvious, and he even has the gall to show before and after pictures where he literally the only thing he does is that he just combs his hair differently to hide his receding hairline, which is about as convincing as his blood flow theory. So there isn't much more to address in this video, as, like I said, the rest is just a tutorial for application, so let's get back to the ingredients of this product. So, we talked about the proprietary blend already called Synfolex, and since we don't know what that really is, it may as well just be Hairguard's leftover lube and fecal matter as far as we're concerned. But fortunately, he does list the other active ingredients in his product, so let's go ahead and take a look at them. The first one I want to talk about, and it was no surprise seeing this in the product, and that's saw palmetto. And it's no surprise because you see this plant in almost every natural product sold which is marketed towards hair loss, and that is because it is often thought of as a natural 5A reductase inhibitor, which is funny because Hairguard said he wanted to make a product using natural ingredients for people who were worried about side effects. But if saw palmetto were to have the same mechanism as finasteride, which is that it's a 5A reductase inhibitor, then why wouldn't it also have similar side effects? I mean, does something suddenly become immune to adverse effects if it's natural? Will someone please tell me what in the fuck is so special about nature again? Anyways, side effects aside, there is no good evidence that saw palmetto is an effective hair loss remedy. In a review article from 2009, which I'll link below, the authors reviewed the literature behind 3 studies that supported the claims of efficacy of saw palmetto in the treatment of androgenic alopecia. However, the studies included a very small sample size, and the differences in results were small. The authors concluded that, quote, significant evidence for advocating the use of saw palmetto in androgenic alopecia is lacking, end quote. Another study from 2012 compared saw palmetto directly to finasteride at the standard dose of 1 milligrams daily in 100 male patients with androgenic alopecia. Now, this was not a randomized or blinded study, but they did find that while 38% of patients treated with saw palmetto felt that they had an increase in hair growth, 68% of those treated with finasteride noted improvement. So at best, saw palmetto is only half as effective as finasteride, although this study had limitations in it that it wasn't a blinded study and there was no control group. So even though we do know for sure that the finasteride results have to be legitimate since it is an FDA-approved treatment with many randomized control trials, it is really difficult to ascertain how well the saw palmetto would have compared to placebo, I should say, since there was no control group here. I mean, it's fully possible it wouldn't have had any benefits beyond placebo, and studies done on saw palmetto as it relates to treating benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, have indeed also shown that it is no better than placebo. Now, I know BPH isn't the same as hair loss, but the type of 5A reductase enzyme which affects the scalp is the type 2 5A reductase enzyme, which finasteride inhibits, and that is the same enzyme that also affects the prostate. So presumably, there would be some correlation between the two studies. Again, a control group could have confirmed this in the hair loss study, but for the time being, we shouldn't assume saw palmetto is any better than placebo when it comes to treating androgenic alopecia. Now, another thing I want to point out is that the saw palmetto that was used in these studies was oral saw palmetto, and the scalp elixir is a topical formula. So even if you think saw palmetto may work as a weak, natural version of finasteride, there is no saying whether or not these results would hold if the plant were applied topically, or even if it would absorb at all. I mean, who knows? Obviously, this is not a very strong treatment. And also another thing I want to bring up is a hair loss and wellness channel I used to follow back when I bought into all the finasteride fear mongering and tried to go the natural route. And I am not bringing this up to bash the guy or anything, but he's had a channel for a long time. His name is adkpinecone, and I'll link it below. And I think he's had the channel for about a decade or so. And what he's done is that he's documented his journey fighting hair loss using only natural treatments, most notably saw palmetto, as well as a few other things. I think he's tried cayenne pepper or something. And today he is unfortunately completely bald. You can't see it on his channel because he deleted the videos, but you'll notice in all of his newest videos he's wearing a hat, which is sad, but it also makes you wonder where he'd be if he didn't buy into the finasteride fear-mongering and realize that nature is the enemy when it comes to fighting hair loss. Again, I want to emphasize, I have nothing against this gentleman. I mean, I actually used to comment on his channel, and we were cordial, although he did ban me recently because I criticized some of the claims he made. And I just thought it was interesting to bring him up, though, because at one point in my journey, I was a lot like him. I bought into the fear-mongering about finasteride for a while, and I gave myself a nocebo effect where I convinced myself that there was a problem when really everything I thought was wrong was either just in my head or just normal occurrences I experienced before taking finasteride that maybe I took for granted. So when I see someone like adkpinecone, I kind of see a reflection of how I would have turned out had I never snapped out of it and overcome my fears like I did and wound up being so ashamed of my appearance I'd have to wear hats indoors for the rest of my life, kind of like this guy does. So anyways, that's enough about saw palmetto. Bottom line is that there's no good evidence that it works, and even if we go by the existing data, it is a very weak treatment compared to finasteride. So it'd be like fighting a fire with a fire hose versus a water dropper. So obviously this can't be relied on as a viable hair loss treatment long-term or even short-term for that matter. So what is the next substance in his alchemical disaster he's charging the price of a used PS4 game for? This one is interesting because it's one of the few listed I haven't talked about before. Most of the other ingredients like caffeine and the above-mentioned saw palmetto I've talked about many times on my channel, but I don't think I've ever talked about safflower oil before as a hair loss treatment. So let's examine some of the research behind this ingredient. So safflower oil is commonly found in many processed foods, and it isn't known as a particularly heart-healthy oil due to the high composition of omega-6 fatty acids. So what would give people the idea that it could be utilized topically as a hair loss treatment, I wonder? So I guess this is based on a preclinical rodent study where it was shown that applying safflower oil stimulated hair growth locally in mice. So using animal studies and testing a product as morally questionable as I think that is still standard fare when it comes to beginning testing for any hypothesized treatment. So I assume there would be some follow-up study on this to test the efficacy of safflower oil. I mean, perhaps it would include some human studies where factors like proper dosing quantities and frequency could be established, but lo and behold, I found jack shit because there isn't any data. I mean, at least no data as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Hairguard is literally including an ingredient in his product and claiming it promotes hair growth based on a single study involving some unfortunate mice. There is no data on if this would work in humans, so we don't know if it would help. And even if it could, in theory, work, we don't know what kind of titration protocols we could use when applying the treatment. So I don't know what kind of info Dr. Hairguard or whoever came up with this piss was thinking when he decided on how much safflower oil was going to be put into this product. More than likely, he just went ahead and put a couple of drops in the bottle, enough so that he can list it as an ingredient, and just hope that your average idiot would look at it, Google it, and then just trust this rodent study because it doesn't know any better. I also think it's funny how on the product website they describe the safflower oil as being famous for its ability to promote stronger, thicker hair. I mean, famous amongst whom? Rodents? Since there are no human studies and we can't determine if it works or how much safflower oil is needed, even if it does work, you might as well just buy some safflower oil from the grocery store and drench your head in it every night. I mean, if anyone wants to try that, let me know and get back to me after a few months of treatment and tell me if you got any results. I mean, I'm genuinely curious. Thank you. So clearly, safflower oil is obviously bunk, but what about Eclipta Alba? For those who don't know what Eclipta Alba is, it's just a weed that grows in India and I think some other Southeastern Asian countries, and it is used as a folk medicine for treating some conditions, including hair loss, by cultures who believe in traditional medicine, witch doctors, shaman, voodoo, that kind of bullshit that isn't taken seriously in nations that aren't third world shitholes. So the only scientific data that does exist on this ingredient are two rat studies that showed a faster conversion of the hair follicle going from the telogen resting phase into the anagen growth phase, which obviously seems like a good sign. However, and I know this is getting a bit repetitive at this point, but I didn't make the damn product, so don't blame me. But once again, there are no human studies to corroborate any of this. I mean, who gives a damn about rodents? Show me some data on actual human beings like you and me. Is Hairguard making his products for people or for their balding pets? So anyways, let's move on to the next ingredient, taurine. Taurine is a non-essential amino acid, meaning our body produces it naturally so you don't have to ingest it, and it is also found in some energy drinks and taken as a supplement for some purported ergogenic benefits as it relates to sports performance. And studies have shown that taurine does have a presence in human hair follicles. The study supporting this is an in vitro study, but fortunately they use actual human hair follicles this time. They found in the study that human hair follicles absorb taurine, hence why there are high amounts of taurine in human hair follicles. There was also increased hair elongations in the presence of taurine compared to the control, where the hair was not exposed to the taurine. In addition, the taurine block the deleterious effect of what is called TGF-beta 1 on hair follicles. So what in the hell is TGF-beta 1? It is a growth factor that causes fibrosis, which is collagen deposits, which kind of brings us back to the theory I discussed at the beginning about minoxidil suppressing collagen deposits on the scalp. So based on this study, there are theoretical reasons why taurine might be good for hair follicles, but once again, we are lacking human studies to test this theory in any meaningful way, and we certainly don't know whether or not the amount of taurine in Scalp Elixir product is comparable to what was used in the actual study done on it. I mean, you might as well just pour Red Bull on your scalp, and I mean, you can buy this pretty dirt cheap at Costco after all. So again, nothing so far with any strong research, but let's move on and talk about the next ingredient. So finally, the next one is caffeine. Caffeine is found in other products which are marketed towards hair loss, and that includes treatments like Alpacin, which I did a video on a few months ago where I discussed caffeine and hair loss very much in depth, and I'll link it down below for those who are curious. But to summarize the data on caffeine as a hair loss treatment, the theory is that caffeine, when applied topically, doesn't influence DHT or the 5A reductase enzyme the way an anti-androgen would, like finasteride. Rather, it works by inhibiting the enzyme called phosphodiesterase, which in turn regulates cyclic adenosine monophosphate, also known as CAMP, which is a growth stimulant. So, since phosphodiesterase breaks down CAMP, then a phosphodiesterase inhibitor like caffeine should increase cyclic AMP, which in turn could theoretically promote hair growth by keeping the hair in the anagen phase longer. Also, caffeine has been shown to increase IGF-1, which helps regulate angiogenesis, which in turn promotes hair growth by improving local blood flow to the hair follicles. Now, when I say blood flow, I am talking about the formation of new blood vessels directly to the hair follicles. I am not talking about just increasing blood supply to the scalp. If it were that simple, then things like cardiovascular training or blood pressure medications would increase hair growth. That's important to remember the next time someone tries to sell you a scam product because it improves blood flow. So, getting back on the topic of caffeine, there are some clinical studies done on humans showing the beneficial effect of caffeine for promoting hair growth. However, as I pointed out in my video on caffeine and hair loss, these studies all suffer from problems with conflict of interest, as the investigators were all funded by Alpecin, which is the company that markets the line of Alpecin products sold throughout Europe, which contain caffeine and are heavily marketed towards treating hair loss all over television, newspapers, magazines, you name it. So until further independent research is published, I remain skeptical, and even if it is beneficial, you might as well just try the Alpecin products that are sold, like the shampoo and the topical stay-on formulas for which these studies were based on. I mean, especially since we don't know if the scalp elixir contains the same quantities of caffeine as was used in the studies. I mean, we only know that it exists in the product, and it was likely just put there so Hairguard could ride off the coattails of research done on another product, even if that research was conducted for the purpose of reaching a favorable conclusion, since the researchers of the product are the ones who receive a paycheck from the ones who manufacture the product. I'm talking about Alpecin, of course. So there are other ingredients I could mention that are in this product, such as lies, hype, and greed, but I think those are self-explanatory. But the bottom line is that products like this seek to obfuscate a course of action which should be simple for people fighting the good fight against hair loss. Companies that promote trash alternatives to clinically proven treatments like minoxidil and finasteride they know for a fact that in the battle of information, they have no chance of competing. So in order to get you to choose what they're selling over actual FDA-approved treatments with really, really strong evidence, they need to gaslight and fearmonger to the point where consumers will not even consider them. And in their desperation, they'll elect to use treatments backed with flimsy evidence on the notion that they're safer. And sadly, this type of fear-mongering works, and it has resulted in a lot of men losing their hair and wasting their money lining the pockets of charlatans and con artists who are now laughing their way to the bank, while their victims are now struggling to come to terms with their newfound identity. So they're seeking out bald reassurance videos on YouTube that tell them, just shave it, bro, and you'll be bald and look good like Jason Statham or The Rock, when in all actuality you'll probably end up looking more like Jason Blaha or Moby. So please guys, do yourself a favor and do others a favor, because every time someone buys a scam product like this, you're not just wasting your money, you're doing your part to promote an industry that spreads fear, ignorance, and preys on the insecurities of young men everywhere. So anyways, that's all I want to say about the subject. I'm going to go back to playing Yakuza 7, and I'll see you guys next time, and this time it won't take a full month, I promise. Alright, take care.